Hello, welcome to our 1 hour or so video about the installation of an Espar B4L-M2 furnace or heater. And we installed ours in our 2023 Ford Transit, long wheelbase, not extended, I should say long. We've had it installed for a couple months. We've probably run it 100 times, including 3 nights at 9,500 feet in the very cold weather. And this thing just runs like a champ. We love it. This is installed under this passenger seat, which is a little unusual. It's a big heater, so it really barely fits under there. In fact, I would say that you must have something like the AVC Rig Trim kit to create that extra space that you need, but it does fit. We managed to figure it out. It took us about 6 days, very slowly and carefully going through the whole process. If I did it again, 4 days, easy. So I know where everything goes exactly, but it's a tight fit, so you really got to take your time to get it in there. We chose this heater because it runs on gas, not diesel, and it auto-compensates the air-fuel mixture for elevation, so you don't have to worry about that. We were at 9,500 feet, worked great. That has worked great every time we fired it up. It takes a little longer at that elevation, and you can tell that it's working a little hard, but no problems, no problems. We love this thing. There's a couple major challenges, and the duct that pushes the hot air out is pretty large and stiff. And you cannot be doing S curves with this duct. No way, not in that space, not with this duct. So everything has to be a straight shot out. And you'll see that in the video. The other thing is the spatial challenges underneath the van, where you put the heater on the floor of the van and you cut your holes to run your inlet, your exhaust, your fuel line, and your pump power. You're going underneath the van in an area that's very, very tight. And we worked it out. One thing I would do, one significant thing I would do differently is the power supply to the pump. I did what everyone does, which is I ran all 4 of those items, the inlet, the exhaust, the fuel line, and the pump power. Ran them all underneath. You don't have to do that. The fuel pump power, I wish I had just kept inside the van. This is an electrical line, I don't know, it's 12 gauge, whatever it is. I wish I'd kept it in the van, run it behind the passenger and driver's seat over to the left side of the vehicle, and then just found a place to punch through. Then you avoid the drive shaft, the exhaust, that hot exhaust system. And if we'd done that, then we wouldn't have anything crossing over that hot exhaust system and the drive shaft. I still might do that. I think that would be a couple days easy. I could reroute that electrical line. So that's the one exception on the build. Finally, we are not professionals. So, I'm not telling you the right way to do it. It's completely your responsibility to figure these things out. Read the manual, even though it's quite bad, it's worth reading. I read it 3 or 4 times. In the video, you're going to see, for example, seat modifications. We're cutting away parts of the passenger seat. We're cutting holes in the floor of the van. You're dropping the fuel tank. You're doing a lot of stuff where pay attention. This is your responsibility to do all these things right, and you need to decide if you're comfortable with what you're doing. I'm just showing you what we did, and you can decide if any of that is useful for you or not. All right, tank is mostly empty. Here's the van, driver's side. Fuel tank. I've got some makeshift supports. And bit by bit, we're going to drop it, slide it out and work on it. Okay, we're dropping the tank today, and I'm under the van. That's the front left tire, and I'm really close to the tank. Here it is. And of course, these straps, there's 4 of them. There's one, and there's a couple more back there. I'm labeling each of them. This is strap number 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I have an R pointing to the right side of the van and an L to the left.
I'm on the driver's side. Here's the fuel tank. That's the input for the fuel when you fill your tank. I decided to pull this hose clamp here instead of this one. It just seems a little smarter to me. I think it's going to be easier to get out. All right, so we've removed the straps, and like I said before, we numbered them all left to right, and then my helper taped every bolt to where it belongs. So that should make reinstallation straightforward. All right, we're back under the van, looking forward. We've dropped the back end because the front can't drop yet because the fuel lines are right there. And then if you look up, you can see the sending unit. Up here, the sending unit, Monique's pointing to that red clip. Yeah, initially you put the pick in the top right here, and you get it about a 1/4 of an inch up. Then you got to come in and squeeze it.
Okay.
And then it'll come up. Okay, so did all this, broke the foam up front, and then Monique, can you see that other port that's just to your left that's been disconnected?
Yes.
That was an additional one. That was another red clip. You lift it, you pull it out. So now we're left with, I think, yeah, one zip tie. We'll clip that, pull the tank out.
Where is it?
It is right here.
Okay.
By this connector. All right, now I'm facing toward the back, and the sending unit is right there. And so now this, for example, is free. You just have to unsnap it from these snaps, work your way back. And you get up here and there's this foam block. And so we're carving that so that we can pop this off too. So we have to do that last bit. Okay, the tank is out. We're facing forward. This is a 31 gallon. Support back here that did not have to get disconnected. Sending unit, several disconnections. Forward unit had to be disconnected. Okay, it's time for this shroud to come off. 3 screws with 3 nuts. Comes right off. Before you do that, you might want to mark a reference like I did here, and that might be helpful. Comes right off. We're going to put these back so we don't lose them. Excellent. Okay, we're getting ready to pull this thing out, and I marked 2 black dots. Those are 2 locations that people have used for their standpipe. Yeah, thank you. And once we get this out, we'll have a good look at it and decide where we're going to put it.
What are the blue dots?
I don't know. No, there's blue here too. I mean, I didn't do any of that. I don't know. So before I'm removing anything, I want to reference where things go in and fit up. So just draw the line. This line should match that line when you reinstall it. Oh boy, that's tight. Not quite round. There we go. And then the float, super careful about the float. If I can find it. I think I see it. There we go. There's our float. That's it. Okay, this is the standpipe. This is the Ford EsparParts.com. It's got a little plastic thing in it. We take it out, just a protective thing. And I've got here 2 places where other people have put theirs, so we're going to put them kind of in that area. I think that looks good. Okay. So we just took the standpipe and knocked 1/2 inch off of it. We didn't want it super close to the bottom. We're not worried about running out of fuel because we pay attention to our fuel, but we didn't want it super close to the bottom. So anyway, there it is. You can see it here. I've got about a finger left. We're gonna put this splice piece on before it goes back in the van. And knowing that it should be probably halfway, we put a little mark on the tube so we know when we're about halfway into this sleeve here. Okay, now we located our hole. We'll show you where that is exactly, but we drilled a small pilot hole. Things are looking good. Wrap this to keep stuff from going in there. We're just gonna enlarge the hole to 5/16. So we opened up our hole a little bit. 5/16 is really tight. Anyway, that's where we put it. And then we also bent it, as you can see a little bit. And the reason is we're gonna stick it in. And we plan to orient it exiting the pump, the sending unit this way. It'll come around and it'll pick up the fuel pump right about here, I think. And so based on that, we put that bend in it so that the paddle float will not interfere with paddle float. Okay, we got the standpipe on. And we fought with this. These were really hard to get things into, but we managed to do it. Tighten the clamps down. This is our orientation. It's gonna come out of here, around, and then into the pump, which I think is gonna be right about here. It's actually gonna go uphill, so it goes up. And then we're gonna put these in a split loom, whatever it is, split loom. Okay. We're gonna eyeball that standpipe. It looks like it's right where it needs to be. I'm gonna check the float real quick. It clears. Standpipe looks terrific. And then we're gonna sneak that little hose around there and pop that in and line it up to our reference point here. The standpipe is fighting me, so I'm gonna have to finagle it a little bit, maybe by tipping it, sliding it back. Okay, that felt good. And our mark is over here. So that means that that goes there. And we'll slide into line up. We're back on the sending unit. And it's back in, the collar's on, and this plastic plate is on. We had to rotate the standpipe a little bit clockwise. You can see the two lines that are not lined up anymore to clear that bolt. But that actually swings the bend further away from the paddle float, so we believe there's no issue there. Okay, I think we're ready to put the tank back in. Everything's tightened down. This is our fuel line. It's gonna come around, and somewhere in here is where the pump will be. All right, we're back under the van. This is the back end of the tank. And the sending unit is here. Everything's hooked back up. And then in the back, don't forget there's a zip tie that you gotta reinstall, replace. The new line is over it. That is right there with those two clamps. Okay, we're back under the van. And you just reverse the process. Once you're all set to reinstall the tank, you want to tend to the wires and just be looking and feeling around, making sure nothing is getting trapped as you tighten evenly each of the bolts. Make sure everything is centered. And then we put our pump on left-hand side, strap number 3. Well, that's on a 31-gallon tank. Final note here, that's our pump. I did carefully drill through the shroud, or whatever you want to call this, cradle for the tank, not the tank, but the cradle, and run a zip tie, and then zip tied to this bundle. All right, I got the seat off, and our Ford came with an inverter, which is, you know, not big. There it is in the seat, and we're just going to remove this and get it out of the way. Okay, the inverter's out. Super easy, just simple connectors and 3 screws. Okay, video on the Espar heater installation. This is a Ford seat base transit, and it sweeps up and out like that in the back where the exhaust, where the heat blows. So if you put your discharge louver on there, it's basically pointing to the ground, to the floor. And so this AVC Rig Trim takes care of that. It'll mount here, and looks nice, and will give you a little bit more room to work with. Okay, here's the seat base. This is the back of the base. This is the bottom. And I'm gonna have to open this up a little bit more to get that duct where it needs to go. So that's what I'm doing. Here is the AVC Rig Espar trim kit, and my hole that I cut with drill and jigsaw. It's pretty high up. You don't want to go any higher because of the hole in the seat base, not the hole here. This is fine, but you get pretty high up in the seat base. Back to the base. Okay. In the end, this is what I had to do to it. This is the passenger seat base. I'm looking at the back side, the front side. In the back, so the furnace goes here, right? And it's big. So you want to push it as far back here as you can, which is officially like 1.2 inches, according to the manual. But this has a big opening, so maybe you can push that. That's up to you. I opened up this hole and by the intake. That's the only thing I did down here. I also ground down or filed down. There's a weldment here, and there was pretty big bubbles here that I just took down. AVC Rig trim kit, roughly in place. I had to trim the floor to get it to settle in. And you can see that it fits. Okay, I've decided to keep the inverter. Rather than throw it away, I'll just put it back in the seat. So I've located it here. I'll show you again once I get back in the van, but it's against the wall closest to the driver. And all the plugs seem to reach, and it all looks good. Should be easy. Just gonna mark my 4 holes and put it in. And I just screwed it to the driver's side of the passenger seat base. Okay, starting to figure out where to put the base here. That's the adapter plate. I think that's going to be a great thing to use. And of course the jack is here. Jack goes back somewhere in here. You could possibly put the thing here, put the heater here, but I think that's a much better location. And so I've located the rivets, or the welds, here. The stud is a great reference point, and I've mapped out where I can cut. All right, I got the seat base just sitting here. And relative to the hole, exit hole on the trim kit, I've aligned the heater. And that is approximately the center line of the heater. Now I'm going to put the heater in, give it an inch or two on the intake side and nail down the location of the holes. And now we're looking at the passenger side. This is the jack compartment. And there's the beam, the chassis beam. Okay, try to stay with me. And here's the exhaust system shield. And what we're looking at is up in there. Top of the screen, opposite the exhaust, is a rivet, or a weld, sorry. Keep saying rivet. And then there's the stud. All right, now we've positioned this thing so that that plate hole misses that rivet or weld. But I can't keep going back because I run into the seat base. So I'm really close to the recommended gap, but the seat base has a huge vent hole right there, so I'm not worried about that. And then I had to go that way toward the driver's seat to get off this bend, and I ended up there as a result of both of those moves, the move forward and the move left. Here's the whole location. We're using an adapter plate, this one, and that's great. Allows you to open up a bigger space. That's a jack point like that we ground down and painted. Same here. No issues with that. And then here for this mounting plate, I'm going to use rivet nuts. So I'll put those in. That hole is for the pump wire. Here's the adapter plate. Pump wire. This hole got moved. I moved it to here because here you run really close to this weld point. But you can move it this way and still have clearance to get to your screw once the heater is in. And yeah, so you can kind of see where we settled in. The exhaust heat shield is right there. All right, back under the van, looking toward the rear, passenger side. There's the muffler, there's the exhaust shield, and above me is the jack compartment. You can much better see now by opening. All right, learned a lesson. Adapter plate looking down, forward is that way. That's the fuel line. That's electrical. Then they dropped down into the below the van, and I had them coming together. It's too tight down there to do that. You have to, I think, run them separately. And while I'm at it, I'm opening up this hole so that I can run the sheath all the way through it. So that's a bigger hole. I'm going to run it separately with its own protective sheath, heat sheath. Same with the fuel line. And I expect things will go a lot better this time. All right, we're on the bench. And I've got the exhaust, the intake, and then this is a heat shield, which is around a split loom, which is around the fuel tube. And so I'm taking this all the way up here because in the van, the exhaust heat shield is about 4 inches below this. And I don't want any trouble here with heat. And so I've just insulated this from all of that environment. And then this, of course, is the adapter plate. And that is a hole with a grommet for the pump wire. I had the pump wire bundled with the fuel but it just became a pain, so I'm separating it out and running it separately. And we'll take a slightly different route back to the pump. Okay, so to recap, this wire coming out of the unit, the Espar, was on this side. I wanted it on this side. So to do that, I take the cap off. That's easy. This is a control box, 3 screws. Remove those screws, pull firmly up, and kind of move this out of the way. Then remove the cover, which was on this side, set it aside. And then this wire bundle, which was over here, gets routed below all of this and back up here. It's actually quite easy. And then put the cap back on, put your screws back on, all that stuff, put it back together. My house battery is in the back. And of course my heater is under the passenger seat. I already have the Espar in. Those are just Ford Transit wires. They go under the seat. I have an inverter. I had an inverter, so that's not part of the deal. I have 2 wires going under the floor in this conduit back toward the rear of the van. One, the skinnier one, give me a sec, is this. That has 4, one is hidden, there we go. That's for the super controller, whatever they call it, I forget. I'll show you that later. But that's what that is. So that comes out here. It's going to connect back to the main harness. And it does that via this, which has the same 4 wire colors. So you're going to pin up that one to match this one. This had a cap on it. Remove that cap, and I'll show you real quickly where that cap gets put. So now it's available to receive the multi-controller, I think it's called. Okay, otherwise the other wire going toward the back is power. But before power, this is the other end of the control unit. That's the cap that was removed from the other end that we just looked at, and it gets put on here. This is if you have more than one controller, which I don't, so you just cap and stow that. This connector connects to the control unit, and while we're on that thought, here's the control unit, easy start throw. Very fancy. If you look at these 2 connectors, that's the one you're going to use. It's kind of square. This one is a rectangle, long rectangle. You don't use that one. I don't remember why, but you only use that one. So that's the controller. And then we talked about the power line coming back. That's this one. It's a red and a brown. Red is hot, brown is ground. In the kit, this is what you attach back at the battery location we were just at. That goes to the battery. This is the idea. And you run your hot wire, red, into this fuse. It's a 20 amp fuse. I'm not going to use this type of fuse, but you can. Important thing is you have a 20 amp fuse in that line. The one terminal from the harness that ends in green, that's for your power to your pump. We'll get back to that. This one is for your easy controller unit. This one is diagnostic. So all of those are coming off this harness that plugs into the heater. And there's one more. It's a big coiled cord that you don't use. I think it's for old analog control units. So you clip it, make sure the wires aren't touching each other, and just, you know, safely deal with that. Now back to this. That's for the fuel pump power. That is my fuel pump power. I've got it running down below the van and over to the pump. I have it protected in sheathing. And it ends with, guess what? 2 wires, 2 tiny wires. So you're going to pin those. Polarity doesn't matter. Don't worry about which is which. And that'll connect into that. Okay, the power supply and the control unit wire, I've taped them together, put them in a loom. And this is something that we did in our floor. We cut a slot in the 1-inch XPS and ran some Smurf tube, that blue tube there, all the way back to that wall. It was a great idea. And I do wish I'd done a couple more of those in the van before the floor went in. Quick side note on the pump wire. Here's mine. I ran it really close to the heater. I don't know why. You don't have to. In fact, I'd recommend keeping it away from the other pipes, the intake, the exhaust, and then the fuel line. Just put it over here somewhere. All right, pump wiring. So, covered this before. This is the wire that runs through the floor, around the van, and to the pump. And this is the other end. Sorry for the bad filming. 2 green wires. I've stripped them back. There's no polarity here that you need to be aware of. You just wire it however you want. And you use this connector. These all come in a little bag. This is the connector for that. And they give you twice what you need. You only need 2 pins and 2 of these. When you're all done, that will mate up with this one. And this is part of the big harness that confuses everyone. So this connects with the pump wire. So we'll see how it goes. Tool tip, unless you have exceptional vision, if you're an old guy like me especially, these magnifying glasses with a light on them are so nice for doing that pin work. Okay, this is a properly trimmed wire for the pump power. You can see that the exposed wire is pretty small. And when you set it in the connector, the pin, I should say, the longer tangs, I suppose, on the left grab the sheath, not the wire, not the conductor. The shorter ones grab the conductor. That's how that works. We'll go ahead and do it. Okay, back on the wiring. You before you do anything, you put these rubber, I don't know, sleeves on. Here I've already crimped the wire itself. You want some kind of small needle nose pliers or something like that to do that. You fold one tab over, then the other. It should look like that. You give it a little tug, it should hold on. If it doesn't, start over, you get one more shot. And then I'm going to crimp down the casing or sheathing tabs here. Okay, now these are both ready to go into the connector. One thing to note, this is the connector that we're going into, and the blades are, I'll call it horizontal. Sorry. Right? And the pins that we're putting into this connector housing need to be oriented to accept that. So it will go in this way. When you've inserted those into the housing, you'll get a nice little click. So you know you did it right. Then you press the rubber pieces, the little red guys, push them in with a little screwdriver or your nails, just your nails work fine. They set in real good. The last part is to fold over this little hatch here and click that shut, then you're good, you're done. I finished it off with some electrical tape just to clean it up. This is ready to plug in. Okay, now we're going to wire up the easy controller. This wire runs all the way back of the van to the easy controller plug-in. So you got to pin up this end of it. When you're done, that will go into this connector, which is part of the wiring harness. Okay, you will see that there's a red, a brown, a blue, and a red blue. And this wire, that's the same. I guess this other blue, yeah, it's actually a blue-black. So they match up. So the main thing here is when you pin up your connector, match color to color. On this pin up, you get the connector housing. You get 6 pins, so 2 extra. And then you get this little piece here, whatever you call it. You do need all this stuff. All right, we're onto the super controller unit, whatever you call it, that controls the heater. This is the connector that you have to pin up. There's a wire, whatever you call this. To get that out, I used a tiny screwdriver like you use for eyeglasses and watches and stuff. Probably don't need that, but you have to gently pry that and then pull it out. Okay, I've got this so you can see it better. If I line up the mating connector, you can see that I've got blue, black, and red on top. I'll say on top. So on this one I've got blue, black, and red on top, and then the other two at the bottom. They line up, that's the point. So make sure that when you put these in here and you hold them next to each other, that the right wires line up with each other. Okay, these pins actually have, boy, it's really hard to point. I'm pointing with the brown wire. Those have a little barrel that the wire can actually go into. See if I can get a better shot of that. There. So you actually strip these a little bit more than you might think. That it's snug in there, but if you twist your wires, then carefully twist this pin onto the wire, you'll get it tucked in there. And then you go ahead and crimp these just like the pump power line pins. Okay, that's what it looks like when it's all done. That conductor is actually inserted in that tube a little bit. Do that 3 more times. There's all 4 completed. As you do each one, when you crimp the conductor, give it a little pull. It shouldn't move. You want to check each and every one, because troubleshooting this when you're all finished with the job, oh boy, that wouldn't be much fun. Okay, when you put these into the case, put them all in at the same time. And they should click into place when they're in. And then push that rubber orange piece back into place. Hi. Should look like that. I got a crooked pin. I'll straighten that out. The last piece is that little orange guy. Puts the pins in exactly the right spot. Use needle nose pliers. It goes right in. Okay, this is just problem solving with the short vent, and it's, you know, you'll figure it out. But what I ended up doing was doing an angled cut. I don't know if you can see that. That's better. An angled cut to help me join up with the heater, and that was critical. And once I did that on each end, then hopefully things will line up a little bit better. We'll see. All right, we're back in the van trying to get this duct in, and we found that if you take off the exhaust vent, that gives you more space here to work with, and hopefully this will work. We'll hook this up to the vent. Okay, so that was the trick. Remove this exhaust vent, gives you more space to initially get it in. The off angle cuts from earlier, and then strap this in, and then with a buddy, one person can stretch and fight the hose and the other person can line this up, and it worked. Okay, here's the final installation in the seat. Inverter's back in, installed on the side, plugged in, functioning. This is our wire power line and the easy controller. We have it in this heat sheath, which you don't probably need, but we had some. And then under here, you can't see it, we put this tab here. This actually runs under the floor in a Smurf tube conduit, which we provisioned in when we did the floor. And this fuse that no one talks about, that's a 3-amp fuse for the controller. And it was on a pretty short line, so we just extended it, and I've clipped it right there, which I can get to, and I can change it right there, and it's out of the way. Also, we've tied all the wires back and out of the way. This one is the seat one, that's the last one to go on. But they're not going to bounce around. You don't want that. So they're all tied together throughout here. They're also all labeled. That's the Easy Start controller. It's diagnostic. That's the fuel pump power. And we're about ready to button this up. I did run it already, and this part didn't get hot at all. This got pretty warm. This got even warmer. But I'm not at all worried about the wires back here. Under the van, passenger side, that's the front right wheel. Ford Transit, this is the compartment where the jack is stowed on our vehicle. This is what I'm calling the chassis beam. And then just beyond that is the exhaust heat shield. Of course, our Espar, can't see it, but it's right up, it's tucked right up in there. And I'm really pleased with this exhaust run. It comes down and continues down. It has no low points. I don't have to worry about condensation pooling or anything like that. And then all we have to do is add the last piece, which will be a further drop. Minimal bends. Just super happy with that. And then now we're looking forward again. This is the intake. And all we did there was we just brought it down, and then there's this cross member, we're just going to tie it to this thing. And it's protected from spray from the front, partially from below, and it's got nice clearance here. It's short, minimal bends. And then lastly is the fuel line on this side, and that's in a heat sheathing, which you really don't need down here, but we already had it on because we had routed it above the heat shield. But I don't think you need to, so we just made our life a lot easier, and we came down and forward, picked up the same cross member, and we're just riding it across. I'm going to clean up these zip ties and probably put something better in there. And then it rises back to the fuel tank side. And we think this is definitely okay because in the manual for the installation, I believe it claims 2,000 millimeters of head from the tank to from the pump to the heater elevation is acceptable. That's like 78 inches. So tons of capability there. I don't see a problem here. We're going to jump to the other side. Let's start over. This is the back end of the van. We're looking back. That's the fuel tank. And here's the fuel line that we just were looking at. So it's coming over to the fuel tank, and it just makes its way up and over. That's really not difficult. The pump power is this line here. That actually comes down from the heater and then turns this way toward the driver's side, up and over the heat shield for the exhaust system. And so that power line is in a split loom conduit and a heat sheath. And it does not touch the exhaust system heat shield. Okay, that's our pump, using the kit bracket that puts it at the right angle. And we just picked up the existing bolt for this tank strap, and that is strap number 3 on a 31-gallon Transit, and that's what that looks like. All right, it's the end of a long day. We've been at this since 7 a.m. It's 5 p.m. Not too long, but I've got more work to do. Here's the final product. And we've got the AVC Rig closeout, or what do they call it? A trim kit. And I love this thing. It really is the only way that I could see that you could have a hope of even getting that big Espar under that seat. We also, Ford has this fabric sheet that closes out this kind of cosmetically, but they only put Velcro here and here, and the thing falls in, and it's just pain. We ran Velcro along the whole back side. Okay, I wanted to show you just my temporary setup here. I've got a 12-volt battery, and I put the positive through a 40 amp breaker. Doesn't matter, something large, more than 20 amps or greater. That's just a switch. So as I was hooking it up, I had the switch tripped, and now it's not tripped. Anyway, positive through this, and then through the system 20 amp fuse, and right into the power line for the heater. Comes with the kit. And then the negative just goes right in to there. And so I had it tripped as I was setting it up, and then when it was time to go, I had it all ready to go. I reset the breaker, and that was it. And then you had power, and so you could try out the heater, make sure it's working. First time fire up. And in about 5 minutes, we've got Pretty toasty air coming out the exhaust. Is very, 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 very hot. End of the day. 1 week later. It took a while. It really did take most of a week to get this thing in. Listen to that. That is some hot air, people. And beautiful sound. Wow, that's really warm.